Tonight we are hearing from two women who say they were victims of a local shelter for homeless youth.
Urban Street Angels and its leadership are the defendants in an explosive lawsuit filed in San Diego Superior Court. News 8's Richard Allen is live downtown with more on what these victims are saying and how the nonprofit is responding. Richard.
And Carlo and Marcella, these allegations here range from labor law violations to alleged drug use among staff members to sexual misconduct targeting the youth who come to Urban Street Angels for support. Now, the complaint was filed by a former staff member who says she was forced to resign after she raised these concerns, but nothing was done. But the group's founder vehemently denies all allegations, reiterating his stance that they were brought forward by, in his words, a disgruntled former employee.
I would say from the jump there were things that were off.
San Diegan Sunny Ray became an employee of Urban Street Angels, a nonprofit offering shelter and support to homeless youths aged 18 to 25 back in November 2017. After her experience there, she says she now fears for the safety and well-being of the vulnerable populations it serves.
They are in serious danger.
This 27-page civil complaint filed in Superior Court details a series of disturbing allegations, from labor law violations to sexual harassment to wrongful termination. A single mother of two, Ray claims she was not fairly compensated for the amount of work she did, was subject to humiliating queries about her sex life, berated by her boss for asking basic questions, and witnessed disturbing behavior, including drug use among employees on a staff outing to Baja. Eric Lovett is founder and executive director of Urban Street Angels, whom Ray also alleges had inappropriate relations with some of the nonprofit's clients.
Eric being in a position of power, that rubbed me the wrong way to hear of it, but he so passionately denied all of that.
In fact, Eric Lovett has categorically denied all of these allegations to News 8.
I believed every single word of it.
Sophie Liedtke is a recent graduate of the Urban Street Angels program. She alleges she suffered sexual abuse at the hands of a male staffer, as well as another youth in the program, but her complaints were dismissed.
Not having a good family support, like you turn to these people hoping to find some sort of support, and when they do that to you, it's almost like you're betrayed.
Now, in a statement, the head of Urban Street Angels, Eric Lovett, takes these allegations seriously. He says, adding, our organization denies all of Ms. Ray's allegations or that we have committed any wrongdoing. Going on to say, quote, we will vigorously defend our organization and are confident the actual evidence and the truth will prevail. Carlo?
Thank you, Richard.